Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Diary of a Doomscroller, the podcast where I hit my screen time way too often, but I'm reflecting on that. I'm Ray Renee. I'm excited for this episode. I wrote some notes on the topic back in March, but I didn't have the spoons to talk about it because I'm honestly kind of one of those people that if the topic is super relevant, I don't really want to talk about it because I don't really want to go viral or be a part of trends. I want to talk about things when they've kind of settled and they don't really matter, but I can finally talk about it. I don't know. This week's episode, you're going to have to sort of hang in with me a little bit. We're not so much dividing things up by topics, we're going to go in a sequential progression. Okay, so before we start with our sequence, I do just want to say it's not necessarily that I don't believe in any of these things, especially inner child connection. I am going to kind of dog on it in about 2 seconds, but it's all in the name of just sort of good philosophical argumentation, right? It's just in the name of let's ponder that. Let's ponder the ins and outs of that. What do you think about my counter arguments? How would you respond to these? So, if I say anything that sort of activates something inside of you and forces you to get a little bit defensive, keep in mind, I don't know you. I'm not trying to ick on anything that works for anyone. I'm just trying to share some of my skeptic thoughts, if you will. Okay, so when we're talking about inner child connection, on Instagram Reels, there was a high trend of these women sitting and drinking cups of coffee and playing some pretty some plucky type of music and then putting on caption or text on the picture, I went to coffee with younger me today. And then they would share some type of question that they asked younger them, or some question that younger them asked older version of them, or some type of story that they shared with their younger self. And ultimately, these videos ended with some type of closure that was offered by being able to either guide your younger self or affirm your younger self or gain knowledge from your younger self. And so I actually did my own take on the trend. So this was back in March 5th of this year, 2025. I saw myself at coffee this morning. As I walked up to the seat, she snapped, "Who the hell are you? I don't know you." I could have said more, but I smiled. "My bad. I must be at the wrong table." She didn't ask me to stay. As I was thinking about this trend, I think that inner child connection sort of rings true to you if there was some type of trauma in your life, right? I think the hardest pill to swallow is when you either think back to friends who you saw living a more normal life than you, or you learn just that other kids had more normal lives than you. I think that if inner child connection resonates with you, it's probably because you did not live normal age appropriate life, i.e., why you feel disconnected to your inner child. Because unlike those kids who lived just normal children lives, so they were probably a little bit more connected with themselves, at least living more presently. Rather, they were connected to themselves, but living more presently. You, as a kid who feel disconnected, were likely living in states of disassociation, hypervigilance, hyperindependency. You likely dealt with emotional enmeshment or avoidance. And these type of themes for children to go through is abnormal. If not abnormal, unwell for people, okay? I'm not going to argue that it's abnormal because neglect does seem to be something that is within human nature, which is very strange to me. But it happens on such a high scale and with so little effort that it makes it very hard for me to believe that it is against what we are capable of doing, you know? Whether it's abnormal or not, though, it is still incredibly unwell for children development, right? No duh. Okay, thanks for the mansplaining, Mariah. You're welcome, girl. Where I am going with this, though, is that if you were involved in those types of scenarios, then I ask you to question if you are sort of taking a role in exploiting yourself as an inner child connection by asking of closure from your younger self. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not trying to demonize getting in connection with your younger self, because as I'll sort of solidify in our next stopping point of block theory, I do think it is important that we are given the access to our full context, right? So you've been alive for all of the years that you've been alive. If you can capture knowledge about a majority of those years, I think you're doing yourself a great service. It's comforting to know our full context. So, certainly, I think it is important to learn who you are. I think that if you are someone who doesn't have a lot of memory of your childhood, you deserve to go through the healing to work through everything that goes along with that and eventually have access to those memories, whether they're hard to process or not. I think you deserve the support to be able to process them should you want to. So certainly I'm not trying to like shit on inner child connection as a way of growth, because I do think that becoming a little bit more curious about who you were and allowing yourself to be challenged in the safety of your own presence is a really great way to like overspill into other people, so that you're allowing yourself to become more curious about who those people are at their core. Children do not have the capacity to rationalize and to be there to reliably rely on, especially if you are working through some type of trauma narrative. I think it's very important to be able to capture the origin date of these different experiences at 1000%. Absolutely. It definitely helps you put patterns into place, and it helps you understand why you did things, which then helps you feel more in control of your actions, which then encourages you to take more control of your actions. So I'm totally cool with that. I also think it's really important, though, to understand that it is not your younger self's responsibility or the context of these situations. It's not necessarily going to fix anything that's going on, nor does it owe you that. That was like a really hard truth that I sort of had to come to when I started going to therapy, and like when I got back into the gym after my back injury. I kind of went back into those things. Like, I went back into therapeutic lifestyle expecting it to just like fix all of my problems. Like, if I work out enough, if I'm getting enough steps in, if I drink enough water, if I eat enough protein, if I'm doing enough therapy, if I'm journaling, if I'm being creative, if I'm staying busy, if I'm learning new things, then my life will just like be better, because there's no time to feel sad when you're so busy. And then it's like, oh, the hard truth of no, it's just better to do those things when you're sad than like go to the club and do 10 rounds of shots. No, it's not that you're gonna feel better. It's just that, like, it's a little bit more healthy and, like, productive and a better use of your time to do, like, those types of things when you're upset versus going to the and getting incredibly up on 10 rounds of shots and accidentally tipping your roommate $100 because you thought that you wrote $10 but you actually wrote 100, and then she kept the 100 even though you told her that you wanted to put it down to 10, but she didn't want to because she knew she was never going to be able to run one up over you ever again. Who the said that? You guys, literally, I am not a sober girl at all. I am a garden girl through and through. Like, I'm talking, I grew up with cigarette smokers in my house, so I be on the back porch very cyclically, and I don't give a fuck at this point. Being sober from alcohol, best decision I ever made in my life definitely was putting myself in situations that I will never be in again, just because I don't go to bars anymore and I don't get drunk anymore. And like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I would much rather like be on my back porch, like gardening and feeling a little bit lonely and being kind of like pissed off that the birds won't come to my bird feeder than be like drinking at a bar, hands down. And I feel like inner child connection is just sort of like one of those things where it's a very, very, very important trauma narrative to go through. But as I'm saying that, it's like, yeah, because it's important to go through the trauma narrative and your inner child and the things that you wanted to do and like those details, those are only one part of it. The real, not to say that learning those things aren't the real work, but I think that some of the most healing work, at least for me, in my personal opinion, anecdotal, I'm not an authority on anything, is when you can put it into the context of, well, what happened that made you forget these things about yourself? That's the actual trauma that stunted your ability to, we're going to get to it, manifest your goals and your wants as a child. The first point that I would bring up or ponder if I was thinking about if inner child connection is something that I want to go through, especially as a trauma narrative, is desires versus wants. And this kind of goes back to my point that children do not have the resources to help us make decisions for our adult lives. Children, being ego, are full of desires, and desires are not necessarily wants. Desires are things that glimmer and sparkle, and wants are more comparable to gold. Wants are things that actually support who we are and how we move. Desires are all the things that might look nice and might shine as a temptation, but might not necessarily align with who we are, even though it's okay, realistically, if we do them. It's not always going to be the end of the world when you move outside of your values. This scenario right here. You are about to cross the street, the light turns red, the pedestrian sign is saying, wait, 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 wait. And you're only one of 3 people in the party. 2 of them, one being your COPD ridden mother and the other being your husband, decide that they don't want to wait and they start to walk across the street. You, being a civilized individual who waits when you are told to wait, decide to wait until the sidewalk stops saying wait and says, walk across the signs. Walk across the signs. I don't even know what he ever says. So I just like walk away from him because I'm so stressed out about him telling me to wait, 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 wait. But guess what? Most days I wait. I would be lying to you if I told you that I have never once walked across the walkway before the man stops telling me to wait and starts telling me to walk across the walkway. Am I a bad person for that? I don't know if I'm a bad person for that, but I am someone who moved outside of my supposed values when I did that. And I also opened myself susceptible to getting a traffic violation. So I could be potentially punished for moving outside of that value. Next journal considerations are memories versus relivings. If you've gone through trauma narratives, I think that you kind of know like that's the whole point of going through trauma narratives. It's all about trying to recompartmentalize how you are experiencing this memory in the brain so that it feels more third person past tense versus first person re-experiencing. And so when you're thinking about inner child connection, I do think it's really important that you understand how you are remembering your childhood. Are you able to look at it through an adult's eyes, that being your own eyes? Are you able to take all of the wisdom that you have now, all that you know now, and retrospectively look at it? Or when you are remembering these things or seeking these things or wanting to move forward for these inner child wishes, are you reliving this experience as a child? I don't think there's anything wrong with like reliving childlike joy or like childlike glimmer, but also I would argue Adults can experience joy. Joy is not an exclusively childish attribute. You don't need to infantilize yourself in order to experience these more intense or gleeful emotions. Another thing you might consider is illusion versus reality. So, again, are you seeking things that make sense for you? I think that a big way of coping with a life that brings you massive dissatisfaction is maladaptive daydreaming and escapism. I think that the internet being a place where you have so much information and are able to pathologize yourself more accessibly, whether it's good or bad, again, I don't know. It's just the fact, right? We can all Google any symptom, we can all Google whatever we want, and we're going to get some type of answer, right? I think it's important to, especially when you are scrolling, it is important to see how your algorithm is personifying you. Because I think that, especially if you struggle with trauma, while it's really comforting to have other people be able to script out the experience you've had, that is the work of trauma narrative. It is your ability to take your own words and script out your experience. It's important to remember that even when we're listening to someone whose story resonates so deeply with us, it is their story and it's not our story. And so, trauma narrative is a part of, and it brings me to my last talking point, projection versus accountability. Actually going through trauma narratives and working through the chapters of your life that need to be deconstructed and reconstructed is a part of taking accountability for your life. It's still our responsibility to take accountability and take what little control we have that is actually given to us in the form of free will. We could talk about free will a different day. And we move forward with purpose. I think that sometimes when we are listening to other people tell our story for us, it's important that we capture that with, am I projecting myself onto this person? Did I just listen to this person's story or did I listen to my story? Because they're not telling my story, they're telling their story. It's important that we catch ourselves and that we allow ourselves to find that boundary between projection and empathy or compassion. By the way, if you would like to get into the nuanced weeds of empathy and compassion with me, please go ahead and check out my last episode of the podcast. I think those are all the thoughts that I have on inner child connection. You know, it's just sort of like this theme of dilemma for me of, why are you reconnecting with your inner child? How is this information going to continue the story of you? Are you getting stuck in the past, or is your past building your present or bridging your future? Like, what is the intention behind the reconnection? And if it's simply, I want to be fully connected with myself and I want to remember who I was beyond just like this past year, I support you, and I think it's important, and I think that it's important to put historical time frames on your own life so that you remember your history. History is storytelling, and I think that storytelling is becoming a lost skill. And so I think that it is really important that you keep in touch with those things. But as I listed, we have some considerations that I think are important just to ponder as you do so. Okay, so let's keep moving forward and talk about block theory. So, from what I learned, there's block theory more as like a physical principle, and then there's block theory as like a philosophical principle. Block theory argues that time exists simultaneously as like its own dimension. And I think it even supports time travel. I don't know, that's like the more physical side of it, right? But more philosophically, the argument is sort of that there is no past and present that like move sort of like a wave into one another like fluently. There is only present, and we as people only use past and future as a way to feel time moving forward. I think this is really interesting because there does seem to be a real urge for people to see ever moving forward progress. Like, we do not seem to do well during stagnation of any time. I don't know if you've ever tried to do a day where you don't look at the time at all, but as someone who has had the power out for days during hurricanes, I think that not having access to time
Fucks me up a lot.
like it on days that I feel like the day is not progressing as I normally expect it to, I don't have a good time. And honestly, it probably has to do with like living with incredibly cyclical people as like living with cigarette smokers. So much of my day is marked by like, all right, I go back on the back porch like around this time of the day. All right, I drink a soda around this time of the day. All right, I go back on the back porch this time of day, girls. It's very interesting when days feel too slow for me. And I honestly think that days that feel too slow for me are days that I feel the most depressed. Like, I just don't feel as active and like forward moving on days that I feel like are just taking too long. When I think about it in the context of like my timeline, it kind of is like a mind like especially when I think about my future, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I think my future is already predestined. I guess kind of yes, because like my future is going to happen. Even though I don't know how it's going to happen, it's like, yeah, but it's still predestined. Like, it's still going to happen. Like, I have a future ahead of me. But also, it's like not my future because like it's just my life. Like, it's just the one complete life of me. People don't live in the past. They only actively live in a now. That's kind of like what I gathered from the idea. I think it's really interesting. There's some points that like I don't know how I believe it. I mean, I understand that time is a social construct, so like yes, the past like isn't real, right? But I it's like it's hard for me to like conceptualize because I'm like, but people really did exist in the past. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's the part that like kind of confuses me. But when I think about it in the context of my own life, today I was on YouTube and I got a really nice comment where someone reminded me that I have yet to meet all of the people that I will love. And there was something about that that was just so lovely because it reminded me like, oh my gosh, my life somehow is outside of what I know of it right now, and yet I only ever experience it right now.
Wow.
It was honestly just so encouraging, and especially as someone who recently just like went through leaving a lot of friendships behind, and I don't have a lot of friends that I'm in contact with on like a regular basis. I don't have many friends that live locally. Like, I don't live near any of my childhood friends. You know, I'm a pretty quiet person. I'm a pretty hermited person. I sit and talk to myself a lot more than I probably should. It was nice to remind myself that number one, it's not impossible for me to meet another friend, but there's also this future in which I don't even live in the city that I do right now, potentially, and I'm making friends in like a different city. Like, there's this realization that I know what I'm doing right now, but I don't know what I'm doing in the future. And yet there's going to be some time where that moment, that future moment, becomes today's now. And suddenly I'm doing something different. Or suddenly I am meeting someone, right? It's just so crazy how it's like you think about all the people that you've met and how there was a day that it was like T minus 3 days before these two collide. And that changed her story, bro. Like, it's so interesting how we only experience today. I think another really interesting point that block theory kind of raises is sort of this idea of like, if it once was, that means that it always is. And if it always is, then therefore it always will be. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the body keeps the score, sort of in this idea of like, Yeah, if something bad happens to you, I don't care how badly you try to rationalize it and reason it and make sense of it. In the name of self preservation, at your deepest ape monkey brain level, you are going to remember. You need to. You need to. You will remember the exact feeling that you had. You will remember the exact sounds that triggered it. You will remember. And that's in the name of instinctual self preservation. Because guess what, sister? If you truly believe that humans were roaming the world with dinosaurs, you needed to know what it felt like to even think a T Rex was on your back, sister. Okay? Otherwise, you were with the other people that Gen Alpha don't believe ever existed. And so it is important to remember the exact way you felt during the last time you were in a bad situation. That way, if you ever get an inkling again, you know, right? And so, where I do think it kind of raises this question of like, I don't know, is that in support of inner child connection? Or like, would block theory sort of like argue against it, the idea of like inner child connection? And I was talking about it with a friend recently. When you have children, it is really crazy to consider that those are their formative years. The very beginning of your existence is your formative years. And that is to say that the way that your beginning shapes you as a person will mold the person you continuously age to become. Like, that's so insane. It's like
What do you mean?
elementary school bullies can literally destroy your life because it just shaped you to be that way. Like, why? Like, what do you mean? Insert childhood, like, horror story that you have that's like completely shaped your life, and you're like, I want to get over it, but like I can't get over it because it's like I don't know if there's any getting over it, bro. Like, it shaped you. Like, it's in your context. Give yourself the grace of your context, right? And if that's what inner child connection means to you, to like make peace with this idea of like, yeah, there's just some things that like they shape you. I don't know. Brains are bizarre. Then I totally support inner child connection. But again, it's like, is it healthy? Should we believe that if I once was, I am, therefore I will always be? Or is there some type of deviation between this is a person that I once was and this is who I am today, right? Is personal development and change and higher level thinking capable, or is that all farce? You know, it's like if you don't believe in any transformation or separation or change, evolution, whatever, of person, and you always believe that you were who you were, you know, or that like you are your inner child, it's like I feel so instinctual to say no, you were a child, you are an adult. But outside of all of that, I understand that it's like you are this state of being, and like you're this consciousness that doesn't necessarily care that you're, you know, an adult. I get that. But age is supposed to be our friend in the sense of offering the wisdom of life experience, allowing you to challenge these childlike beliefs or habits that you've carried with you with new context. Again, give yourself the grace of the context. Maybe changing and embracing a more adult like stance is okay. Just because it's who you were, you know, obviously, again, the body keeps the score. You keep a part of it. It's if it's who you are, it's who you are. But is there not an adult way to express it? The other day, I thought that someone was cutting me off and I thought they were laughing at me. And literally, the way that I turned, I felt it. I felt the heat just like, I was Hades. I was Hades from Hercules, okay? Ooh, I was so mad. I thought about flicking them off. I thought about honking at them. I thought about screaming at them. And I just did nothing. And then She turned in the gas station. She wasn't cutting me off at all. She was being a little chaotic. Like, I don't think that she should have pulled out in front of me the way that she did because she was blocking the intersection, but she wasn't cutting me off. And in that moment, I was like, I'm so thankful that I didn't lose my cool. Like, crazy bald girl with no eyebrows is screaming at me. Bad look. I was so proud of myself for just like literally being like, but in that moment, I was like, girl, I kind of feel a little guilty for like even getting that upset. Like, should it even activate me that much? Jeez. And it's like, there's this argument of like, well, I'm a hothead. I've always been a hothead. And it's like, yes. And I think that's okay. But am I wrong to also say, is there a way that you could explore that feeling without it becoming so much? You know what I mean? Does it have to become a full body experience for you? Like, literally, after this happened, and this is like a huge reason. I hate driving. After this happened, I physically felt drained. Now, if you haven't guessed, we'll put it in the context of I do have a documented stress disorder. So I do experience stress like very intensely, but still, I did sort of ask myself, like, does it have to bother you this badly that it gets such an extreme reaction out of you? Or is this something you can work on? Can you like become a little bit more okay with the fact that people are going to cut you off? If not, if the answer is no, then like so be it. If the answer is like, nope, girl, you're just a hothead, and the best way that you're going to have to handle it is you're going to sit with those feelings. And even though it sucks and it would feel good to get that energy out and scream at people, you're not, because you're an adult and you're going to manage your own feelings and you're going to regulate however you can and you're going to move forward, but you're never going to eliminate the feeling. Fine. But that still feels different than just, well, this is who I am. Do you know what I mean? And so I don't know if I necessarily prescribe to block theory, especially as a realm of physics, though it is kind of interesting to think about. The big thing that I sort of took away from this philosophy is that it is sort of the philosophy of remaining grounded in your context and practicing based on what you are currently that you are surrounded in. Okay, and our last stopping point on my little sequence of progression is manifestation. So I hear a lot of different ways that manifestation is sort of described. And I'm going to be honest, I do not really participate in a lot of spiritual circles. I think that, especially right now, spirituality, religion, lifestyle is all sort of encompassed by the same theme. And that sort of makes it not for me. It's true. These spaces have definitely started to become a lot more politically leaning. You know, I think that there are really great tools that you can pull from religious spaces, from spiritual spaces. I'm just going to say that I am not incredibly active in either of those bubbles. So, manifestation isn't something that I have a researched definition on. But as I was sitting down and like taking notes for today's episode and thinking on these topics, these were some of the words that came to mind when I thought of manifestation: direction, dedication, realization, and action. And the big thing that I noticed with all of these words specifically is that they all end in the suffix tion. And no shade to you if you couldn't remember if that was a Greek or Latin suffix, because I couldn't either. Tion is a suffix that's used to form abstract nouns that turns them into a state of being or a verb. So we have direction, the state of directing. We have dedication, a state of dedicating. Realization, a state of realizing. And action, a state of acting. We're thinking sort of woo woo and metaphysical states of being or action or doing generates energy. What is manifestation? Manifestation is creating energy by taking thoughts and transforming them into the actions that turn them into realizations or actual things within your reality. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to go as far with The Secret as like manifestation is a state of mind where like if you act rich, you will be rich. No, bitch. It's more of if you want to be rich, you will create a budget for yourself that gets you at least a substantial step closer to your goals or meets your goals in a reasonable time frame. Manifestation isn't I want it, I thought it, I got it, I bought it. It's I wanted it, so I worked for it. It's I knew at 12 years old that I wanted to be a YouTuber. At 26, I'm actually making it happen by recording videos and putting them on YouTube. I'm a YouTuber now. I'm just kidding. I don't call myself a YouTuber, but you know what I mean. It's for the sake of the podcast, girl. And I think that really what's important about understanding manifestation and kind of putting it in the context of block theory and understanding that, like, no, it's not like your inner child like lived a past life. Like it's not a past life, it's still your life. Like it's all one ever flowing life is especially during the panini when everyone else started doing content creation, like I grieved because I wanted to jump in so badly and I was like now would be such a good time. But I was going through grad school. I was accepting and choosing where I wanted to go to grad school on my 21st birthday in the height of the pandemic. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to balance it all. And so it wasn't my time yet. And I knew that my time was coming. I knew that I would have the opportunity. And I knew that it was something that I really wanted to do, but it wasn't for then. And I knew that if I tried to do it, it would just go nowhere, and that it was better to just use the energy that I had on the quest that I was currently on, which was getting the hell through grad school so that I could be done. It's not necessarily that I forgot that I wanted to be a YouTuber when I graduated from high school and decided to join college instead of pursue creative endeavors. It's more of the context of my life was different at the time. I was going through other things that made it very hard to tap into like creative endeavors. You know, it's really interesting because as a kid in high school and middle school, I loved watching girls sit in their college dorm rooms and do tutorials and what's in my school bag and a life in my college vlog and stuff. And yet as a college student myself in that same position, I never even thought about it because that's just not what I was doing with my life, right? Like I was studying, I was trying very hard to adapt to being a person living on my own. I was like trying to make friends. Like I was just living at the time. And then when it came to being an older person and knowing that I wanted to do content creation and thinking I could try it again, I was going through grad school, which was even harder. And I knew that I really needed to focus on getting done grad school and that I wouldn't be able to give both my all and that grad school had to come first. And so now at 26, in a different context and as someone who is unemployed now, it's like, okay, now is my time. Now is my time. Then wasn't my time because now is my time, and then wasn't now, except for it kind of was, I guess. It's not so much that I forgot that about myself. It's that there's this moment of like reality, though, too, of like you can make a million and one plans. Reality doesn't go by plan ever because a plan is not reality. It is your own conjuring up of your own scenarios, your own version of your reality. It is your own projection of what you hope would be to happen. And while I certainly think that planning is a great skill to be able to have, I think there's this trait that makes a good planner from a bad planner, and it is the ability to predict reality over illusion. I hope this makes sense. This one was really fun to sit down and ponder and think about and work on. I've had a really great time like chewing on these topics and actually articulating them. So I hope that you enjoyed. If you made it this far, thanks so much, baddie. Go ahead and leave me a sparkle emoji down in the comments section. Spread the energy, spread the word. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will hit our screen time on the next one.